So November 22nd, we're having a big event at the Cultch called, I guess we're calling it Beyond Forgetting. And that's because Harbor Books has put out a new collection of poems, tribute poems, to celebrate the life and poetry and the legacy of an iconic Canadian poet, Purdy. And I was fortunate enough to have a poem in this collection, and it was, I was very surprised by it because I got an email from Annie in Harbor, and she said, we're doing this collection, and we'd like Eurithe passed us a poem on that she would like to have in the collection. And I had given this poem to Al and Eurithe quite 20 years ago, and I had no idea that they held on to it, and so it meant a lot to me when I found out that Eurithe had asked for this poem to be included. And of course I panicked because it needed a bit of editing, but what poem doesn't, right? So here's the poem. It's called Al and Eurithe. It's about the first time, or the second time I met Al in person. It was at a reading at the Vancouver Press Club on Granville Street, and my friend Michael Lithgow had organized the reading. And I'll just read the poem. I had the good fortune of sitting with Al and Eurithe that night. It's called Al and Eurithe. Sitting in the Vancouver Press Club with Al Purdy and his wife Eurithe, feeling uncomfortable, not sure what to say to the man whose every poem I've read and admired, whose voice, sounding the depths in my head, has become more familiar than those of my friends, right up there with my wife's voice. But there are places in me his poems have touched, marked keep out, even to her. So what do you say to a man whose words have opened rooms in your head you didn't know existed? What do you say? Not much. Because there are no words for it, except maybe fireflies sparkling in the brain, or fox, 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 which I can't say because he's already said it, so I shut up. Grateful he's more than willing to direct the conversation, yet I sit there feeling like a 6-year-old, nodding and agreeing with everything he says, forgetting I ever had a thought of my own, jumping up to get peanuts from the bar when Eurithe says she's hungry, wishing I could stop myself, feeling like Polonius must have felt, a stuttering sycophant, fawning and scraping at the skirts of royalty. But they aren't exactly royalty. More like an old odd couple trying to make an extra buck at the local flea market, hawking Al's books spread across the table, the prices written out in black marker on a piece of cardboard, Al arguing with Eurithe about a pin he's lost, Eurithe says never existed, cutting him off saying, Al, it's not worth it. In a tone my grandmother uses to warn my grandfather the discussion has come to an end. I go to light up a smoke, and Al says, Eurithe is allergic to cigarette smoke, cats, and him. Eurithe smiling thinly through pressed lips. Al's getting impatient, complaining loudly because he wants to read so he can get back to the Sandman Inn to watch the news and get some rest. He stands up a bit shakily to go corner the organizer, who's running around trying to organize, but, according to Al, not doing a very good job of it, leaving me to make small talk with Eurithe, who is pleasant enough, but she knows this is Al's night. That's why I'm here. So when I botch her name, introducing her to friends, she says bluntly, I'm Mrs. Purdy, sparing me any further discomfort, for which I'm grateful. Al's back, all 6 foot something of him, peanut shells and spittle at the corners of his mouth. I want to wipe it off, thinking, good God, man, you're a literary giant, which he is, but that doesn't spare you the traits of other mere mortals. The reading starts. 3 local poets on stage. 10 minutes into their reading, Al lurches up, nearly knocking over the table, shouting, how goddamn long do I have to wait? Then marches out the front door, with the organizer following, told by Eurithe to negotiate. You can hear Al bellowing outside on Granville Street, while everyone pretends not to hear. The poets continuing to read, tension filling the room, like when a parent behaves badly at the dinner table, the kid's afraid to say anything. Door bangs open as they come back in. Al, sitting down, his arms crossed, glaring as if defying me to say anything. I stare back, not wanting to look a coward. When Eurithe says jokingly, Al, think sweet thoughts or you'll have a bad reading. It's Al's turn. He's up there, working his magic. The audience is laughing. This curious old man, who's so much himself, he fills the whole room. I'm listening to the poems, getting lost in that twilight space where time stands still or suddenly speeds up, momentarily glimpsing the hairs of my soul in the flux of another man's words. My defects forgiven, and not straining to be human. A gift he's given me so many times, I'll never get his voice out of my head. But I glance over at Eurithe, and she's nodded off to sleep. The reading's over, a crowd hovering around the table congratulating Al on being Al Purdy while buying his books. I excuse myself to go sit with some friends, saying a quick goodbye, promising to return Al's letter, at which he smiles. Then Al and Eurithe leave, slip out early. Al counting in his head the take for the night. Eurithe just wanting to get some sleep, exhaustion all over her face. Suddenly, I'm ashamed of putting Al up on the mantelpiece of my icons, making him less than human, wondering if I've ever really read his poems. I want to run out to the street, shout, "Wait, have a good trip," hoping Al sold enough books, and Eurithe will have a good sleep before the long trip back to the island. So thanks, Al, for the poems. For being so much yourself, you had to write it all down. Helping us to see ourselves, inhabiting eternity in the shining mountains, in this too brief allotment of time, where only the saying of things is possible. God damn it, you said it well. June 1966.